A beautiful Wednesday morning as we are right here as always to ensure that your day starts on a good note, even as we take you through what has been happening and what is set to happen. That is based on the conversations that we have, candid conversations that revolve around the issues that are there as we try to preempt what is likely to happen moving on. So welcome on board. Like I said, it's always a pleasure to have you join us. This is Morning Cafe. As always, your host, Linda Alela. And importantly, you should be part of this conversation right now all the way to 9 a.m. Hashtag Morning Cafe at Linda_Alela at TV47KE. Let's get to hear your sentiments on what we'll be looking at. You must be privy to what is happening in the world of news, matters, graft, as we deal with COVID-19, even as tough times continue to bedevil the global fraternity. And while we would say that we are flattening the curve, or the curve has flattened in the country, questions still linger as to what really could have informed this. So we'll be taking a look at that and much more. But importantly, we kickstart this session by taking a look at the stories that have been prepared by my team. And President Uhuru Kenyatta's orders and directives seem to be just orders and nothing beyond orders. Yes, that is Monday's directive on publication of KEMSA tenders was just a copy-paste of a similar directive to government agencies last year. So is President Kenyatta just a president of orders, orders and more orders? David Mudhoka with the details.
Kenyans should expect less talk and more action from me. Those were the words of President Uhuru Kenyatta on August 21st as he issued title deeds to thousands of city dwellers at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, KICC. Barely 2 years after President Kenyatta ordered all government entities to adhere to a full disclosure of all its procurement details, the president yet again on Monday directed the Ministry of Health to reveal all procurements related to COVID-19, particularly those undertaken by the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, KEMSA. The copy and paste affair was in response to claims of graft within the corridors of KEMSA.
We have focused heavily on some of the issues that have been raised with regard to procurement in KEMSA and others. But I think this, as indeed was said by some of the speakers earlier, is not an issue that is related just to the health sector, but indeed to all government procurement.
This coming in the backdrop of a similar directive that was issued by President Kenyatta in June 2018. The information to be published includes items or services purchased, contract prices, and the particulars of the suppliers, including owners, directors, and beneficial ownership. The fact that the president has had to repeat the same order twice reveals there's a lot left to be desired in how the government is enforcing its directives, especially in fighting corruption. KEMSA's disregard to the directive further reveals how the rubber is yet to meet the road 2 years on. This has calls for Health CS Mutahi Kagwe to resign continue to gather steam over graft allegations at KEMSA.
Kagwe aende nyumbani, sio angeenda jana, angeenda juzi Mutahi Kagwe, kwa sababu huwezi kucheza na maisha. Mambo ya health ni mambo ya maisha ya watu.
Kagwe has however distanced himself from the allegations. David Mudhoka, TV47.
The Orange Democratic Party has resolved to initiate an impeachment motion against Migori Governor Okoth Obade. 37 out of 41 MCAs met the party's leadership in Nairobi and resolved to impeach the county boss. Joash Onsari with the details.
The Orange Party resolved to initiate a motion to impeach Governor Obado after a consultative meeting with Migori MCAs. 37 MCAs out of 41 attended the meeting and endorsed the party's resolution.
We have largely agreed with MCAs, with a few reservations here and there, that really for Migori County to continue functioning, we need to make a decision. It may be a painful one, but it is the decision that can be made. That is to have the governor of Migori County impeached by the county assembly. Therefore, it is the resolution that the MCAs are going to take steps from today to have the governor impeached.
After his release on Monday, Obado hinted on the looming impeachment motion, saying the times ahead are tough. Obado is facing charges alongside his 4 children and other county officials over embezzlement of more than 73 million shillings in his county.
We are heading towards a very, very bad direction, whereby if I don't want you and I can manage to get members of the press, then I'll ask you just to brand that guy, whatever it is.
The party says, due to corruption charges leveled against Governor Okoth Obado, the decision by the court to bar him from accessing his office, the party, in consultations with the county MCAs, has resolved to have a motion of impeachment against the governor initiated immediately and have the deputy governor take over.
Our main focus of consultation was on the issue of the governance in Migori County. You all know that ODM is a party that supports devolution. It's a party that is closely associated with devolution. It's a party that works to ensure that devolution succeeds. And it's a party that abhors and condemns corruption. We fight corruption. We don't believe in corruption.
Migori County Assembly Speaker Boaz Okoth has already resumed work after being on sick leave. Joash Onsare, TV 47.
Senators, on the other hand, have expressed mixed reactions on a ruling to bar governors facing charges from accessing offices. The ruling that was made almost a year ago being faulted by some senators on an argument of innocent until proven guilty basis. Elizabeth Mutuku with the details.
It's almost 1 year after Justice Mumbi Ngugi instructed that elected executives cannot continue to attend to office functions when facing corruption-related charges was upheld at High Court, a ruling which has applied to 4 county bosses so far and attracted different reactions from leaders from across political divides. Nandi Senator Samson Cherargei wants the review of the ruling, citing the right to fair hearing as per the law, while his Migori counterpart stands with the ruling.
When you call upon county assemblies to impeach governors that are facing graft cases, and most of them cannot access the offices because of the famous Mumbi Ngugi ruling, I think we are setting a very dangerous precedent. One, because the presumption of innocence is provided for by the Constitution. The principles of natural justice demands that you hear that person and ensure that you listen and the case is heard and determined. So when you tell people to impeach based on allegation, because those are things that are yet to be proven in a court of law. So if you tell MCAs to impeach a governor simply because they are facing graft or economic crime cases in courts of law, we are having a double standard, because we will be negating the violation of the principle of innocence, a presumption of innocence, and also presumption of natural justice.
What happens when governors are charged with violation of law is that, particularly when the law that they are deemed to have violated is the one that puts in place economic crimes, they are required to step aside. They are required not to visit their offices because they wield executive authority and they have authority over where the crime took place and potential witnesses.
Governors have, however, been relying to Section 62, subsection 6 of the same Act that provides that the section does not apply with respect to an office if the Constitution limits or provides for the grounds upon which holder of any office may be removed or in the circumstances which the office must be vacated. Justice Mumbi's ruling of 20th 2019 has seen Governors Mike Mbuvi Sonko of Nairobi, Samburu Lenol Kulal, former Kiambu Governor Ferdinand Waititu, and latest being Migori's Okoth Obado stay away from office, a ruling which Cherargei says is taking a political path.
We are aware that the fight against corruption has been politically motivated. It has been hijacked with people's political agenda. What happens if you have an agencies or a government that are against a particular governor? They can bring up Trump charges. The MCA is impeached too. When the courts rule, you might have been found innocent. So let us allow, don't make people to be guilty until proven innocent. Let them become innocent until proven guilty. And therefore, I urge MCAs, let us be sober. And by the way, the authority of executive is not only vested with the governor. It is vested on the county executive members and the deputy governors that run the issue of running of the executive decision. So I think, and I hope in future, we should be able to overturn the Mumbe Ngugi ruling, because it's one of the bad law that the country would not stay on that president.
However, Migori Senator Ochilo Ayako says when one is accused of graft, should step aside until the matter is resolved.
Even I have seen courts, by the way, nowadays are on a dangerous path, and we need to warn them. They are nowadays issuing cash bail, bond that are so punitive that you imagine what is the role of a bond and bail under the Constitution. The role of bond and bail is to secure attendance over a person who has been accused. It is not to punish. But when you see courts of law issuing bail and bond application, they are in a way trying to punish somebody, yet they have not been adjudged, their case has not been heard and determined.
It is within the mandate and duty of members of the county assembly to deal with each case, look at every evidence, and bring the matter either to Senate or decide as they best wish.
Obado was released on 8.7 million shillings cash bail on Monday. Elizabeth Matuku, TV47 Nairobi.
Now, the World Health Organization has warned Kenya against relaxing COVID-19 containment measures due to the drop in the number of coronavirus infections being witnessed. And this as the total number of COVID-19 cases in the country rises to more than 34,000 cases after 114 more people tested positive for the virus as of yesterday's address. Zainab Mohammed with the details.
Despite recording a decline in the number of COVID-19 infections in the past 3 weeks, the World Health Organization warns Kenya not to relax its COVID-19 containment measures, as the drop in numbers may not reflect the true picture of the actual state of the COVID-19 pandemic in the country. The UN Health Body further says, while the decline in COVID-19 numbers is a welcoming trend, there are many factors that could have affected the COVID-19 trajectory, sentiments echoed by the Ministry of Health.
We did say on several occasions here that there has been a challenge in contact tracing, particularly in specific localities, especially in some of the hotspots, like Nairobi County being one of those hotspot areas.
The ministry, however, says the COVID-19 trajectory being witnessed in Kenya is similar or parallel to other countries in Africa, therefore serving as a proof of a decline in the curve.
The figures that we are reporting in the trajectory and trend in a more broader light, in the light also of comparing it with what's happening in other places and other like places like ours in other countries within sub-Saharan Africa. And generally, what comforts us is that at least that trajectory seems to parallel what is happening in some of these other countries.
According to the Ministry of Health, the top leading counties in COVID-19 infections are as follows. Nairobi County continues to lead with 57% of the total cases. Kiambu accounts for 7%. Mombasa 6.9%, Kajiado 5%, Machakos 3.6%, and Busia 3%. This is as the total number of COVID-19 cases in the country rises to 34,315 cases after 114 more people tested positive for the virus in the last 24 hours. 318 people have recovered from the virus, rising the total number of recoveries to 20,211. Zainab Mohammed, TV47.
Now, since the COVID-19 pandemic checked in, many Kenyans have been rendered jobless. This is according to the quarterly labor report by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics that shows close to 1.7 million Kenyans have faced unemployment between the months of April and June.
According to the National Bureau of Statistics, unemployment has greatly taken a toll on Kenyans in the second quarter from the month of April to July. The unemployment rate increased to 10.4% in the second quarter of 2020, compared to 5.2% recorded in the first quarter of the year, affecting some 1.8 million Kenyans. The highest proportion of these numbers was recorded in the age group of between 20 to 29 years. Further results indicate that the long-term unemployment rate of 3.1% is higher than the 2% rate recorded between January and March this year, leaving a total of 929,000 Kenyans affected. The youths aged between 20 and 24 years had the highest rate of long-term unemployment at 7.9%. The proportion of youths aged between 15 and 34 years who were not schooling, working, nor training for work stands at 18.2% in quarter 2 of 2020, a 2.2 increase from the level recorded earlier this year. Nanok Lauren, TV 47.
Still on matters COVID-19, and as the country continues to battle it, Kenyans have thrown COVID-19 containment measures to the wind. A larger majority is neither wearing masks, washing hands, nor keeping a social distance. Kenyans whom we spoke to said that COVID-19 is overrated. Mwangi Minor reports.
A majority of Kenyans whom we spoke to said they are not following COVID-19 containment measures, to the latter since the leaders whom they look up to are leading from behind. A section of Kenyans claiming that their leaders are the superheroes in breaking COVID-19 containment measures. A majority of Kenyans are exhibiting a nonchalant attitude when it comes to wearing of face masks or keeping social distance, oblivious of the danger they are exposing themselves to.
Kutano mingi unapata viongozi wetu hawajavaa. Kwa hivyo ukiona kama kiongozi hajavaa, wananchi pia wanaona ni kama ugonjwa huu, yani wanaona ni kama si lazima wavae. Ni kwa sababu ni viongozi unapata hawavai.
Wanaenda mahali kama viongozi wa Kenya wanasalamia watu kwa mikono. So utatuambiaje sisi tuoshe mikono na nyinyi mnasalamia watu kwa mikono?
Others displaying sheer ignorance by arguing that even if they attend functions where COVID-19 containment measures have been thrown to the wind, they have not contracted the virus or heard of anyone who contracted the invisible yet disastrous and highly contagious virus.
Hii mambo corona hakuna, kwa sababu mambo tukiongelea mambo ya nini ya Mutahi Kagwe sana. Mutahi Kagwe tulianza tunahesabu vizuri huko mbele. Na sasa hivi anazungumza vile waliongelea mambo ya wizi wakaweka chini na wanaanza kusema sasa ni 200, sasa ni 100 kitu. Wacheni waambie tu wana Kenya vizuri, waseme ugonjwa hii hakuna.
Kuna pesa ambazo zimepotea na wananchi ni kama wamekasirika. Hiyo ndio maana unaona wananchi wengi wameamua they cannot put on a mask kwa sababu pesa zao zinakuliwa. Hizo pesa ambazo zingetumiwa kununua madawa, kuweka zile ventilators kwa hospitali, watu wamekula. Sasa mtu atakuja aje na kuambia uvae mask ili hali wamekula karibu shilingi bilioni 100 na.
For some corruption allegations at the Ministry of Health and Kenya Medical Supplies Authority KEMSA proves that coronavirus is either an imagination or rather exaggerated in Kenya's context.
Watu wakusanyika wengi huku na corona haiongezeki juu. Kuna dhana kwamba huku Bungoma watu wanadhania kwamba venye wamekuwa kusanyika na corona haisongi juu ni kwamba hakuna corona, ndio maana wengi wao hawavai mask.
However, some Kenyans are of the contrary opinion. They argue the virus is still with us, and as such, every containment measure, as spelled out by the Ministry of Health, should be followed to the latter.
Kuna maana sana kuvaa mask. Mask ni kitu ya maana. Ni kwa sababu hata wale walisema tufae mask, walikuwa wakijua ni sababu gani. Na sasa wewe mwenyewe ukitoa mask unaanza kutembea hivyo, huwezi kujua kama hii kitu inakuja na upepo ama inakujaje. Unaona? Sasa ni vizuri ukue care. Wewe mwenyewe ukikataa kuchukua hatua wewe mwenyewe, hiyo ni hatua ya mtu binafsi. Ujiweke sawa. Unaona? Ujiweke sawa. Wewe mwenyewe ukiweka bidii ya kuosha mikono, na wewe mwenyewe ukuwe na bidii ya kuvaa mask.
Ni madharau. Watu wanajua kweli hii ugonjwa iko. Si ati kwa sababu hatuna pesa. Serikali imeleta masks kwa bei nafuu ya shilingi 50. Shilingi 50 ni nini kwa mask ambayo inakinga mwili yako?
Ile tu Wakenya wanapuuza vitu
na mtu anakuambia ni nani ameshikwa naye, lakini tunawaambia sio lazima uone mtu ndio huyu.
As the curve flattens, Kenyans think that things have gone back to normal, but still we are not yet out of the woods. Mwangi Maina, TV47, Nairobi.
And Tuesday, Turkana County Governor Josephat Nanok was put on the spot for failing to utilize some 3.7 billion in the 2017-2018 budget of the county. Appearing before the Senate County Public Accounts and Investment Committee, Nanok was hard pressed to explain why his administration failed to use the funds. However, Nanok blamed delay on disbursement of funds as the main reason of their under-absorption of the budget, a reason which was rubbished by senators.
What has happened since then when the projects? Have you been able to carry out this public participation? These projects which were completed and they are not utilized. What feasibility study had been carried out prior to the project being initiated, so that we don't go back to the Nyayo era where we are doing white elephant projects?
Interested to see whether the governor can give us evidence of that in terms of advertisement, re-advertisement, notes or even minutes of minutes where you can show these people did not respond. Because if you're able to do that, I think I'll be telling my people of Muranga, hey, why are you complaining about lack of employment? Go to Turkana. I'm shocked, Mr. Chairman.
Year under review. When you are going now because of political year, and there was no works ongoing just before that financial year. Because it's like you are saying, since you were planning, and because of the politics of that time, then there was no ongoing projects within that period. Is that what you are telling this committee?
What are you doing to make your government attractive to people beyond your county? What are you doing as a government to enhance capacity of your people? Because out there, people have looked down upon members of your community for being untrained. What are you doing in terms of building internal capacity?
That the fact that some money gets returned to the government weakens my resolve, especially now in this time when we are talking about giving money to Turkana, Nodi dumping, and so on and so on. I've heard people telling me, why do you want so much money when you are not even showing anything for the money you're given? Turkana is not able to absorb this money. But I say, no, it's not true. We do need money. In fact, this money is just a drop in the ocean for Turkana because Turkana is so large.
We didn't do much because we are also a self-constituting government at that particular time, immediately after elections. So the bigger part of this came in the second half. So with delayed disbursements, we had those bigger challenges.
Now let's go for that short break. We'll be right back with the newspapers. And welcome back. It's time for the newspaper review as we take you through the People's Daily, the Standard newspaper, and the Daily Nation. Joining me for the same is Ndovo A. Arnold, who's a youth leader, and he'll be helping me review and, of course, giving us his take on the key stories that have been captured on the newspaper. So stay tuned as we kickstart. And the first paper that we'll be going through is the Standard newspaper, and front page of the newspaper. Let's cross over to this side and see what is there. And yes, the front page of the Standard newspaper, sealing the fate on Obado, a story that has been captured in almost all the newspapers in regards to the to the graft cases and charges that have been leveled against Governor Okoth Obado. Developing stories coming in regards to the same. And here we are. So yes, here we are. Let's pick it up from here. I don't know whether we are able to get a clear picture of the same from here. Yes, we should be able. And yes, here we are. And Arnold, good morning.
Good morning.
You well?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, and here we are. Obado is in again, making headlines. I remember at some point in time he was making headlines, for almost like, 6 months or so. And here he is, the better part of last week, and coming to this week, graft charges involving his family, involving his close allies, and now talks of an impeachment are rife as the ODM party declares that maybe it is necessary that they proceed and take it this way.
Yeah, for Obado, it's unfortunate that he's going through all this. When the moment for a man anything touches the family, then this is now just beyond politics. Obado, I think his fate is sealed. Looking at how ODM has decided, remember he has not been in good books with ODM. And right now ODM is having a good day in office.
Yeah.
And therefore you can be sure that that impeachment will sail through, even in the Senate. The other unfortunate thing is when we talk about children being involved in corruption and so on, that's going to hurt the family for long.
Really, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's a developing story, and we'll be expounding more on the same later on as we proceed. But indeed, lots of developments are cropping up in regards to the same. A story that has been highlighted extensively on page 8 of the Standard newspaper. And also on another story, well, of course, not really much of what is happening in the world of news, but an interesting one, exclusive. And they say, I found my mom on Google after 23 years. George was only 5 when he was placed for adoption without his mother's knowledge. Now 28. It is a homecoming like no other. Story expounded on page 2 and 3 of the Standard newspaper. What does it speak of the world of the internet? I think so much so is being made easy by the internet.
That's very true. And internet is kind of bringing us together. Now globalization is being realized faster than we expected. Right now, education has really moved globally to that platform. And therefore, as much as we are going to have some, disadvantages about the whole thing to do with the internet, but it's bringing good more than bad.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's a good platform. Nowadays, if I want to know about Linda, I just get into Google. I'll have a lot of information than before. And that's why the generation that we are currently, the current generation is very lucky, because the availability of information, it's at their fingertips.
All right, well, and as they would say, in as much as you would argue maybe you might not get much, but at least you will not fail to get something. All the best to them. And shock on 1.7 of 1.7 Kenyans made jobless by the virus. This is a report presented to us by the Kenya Bureau of Statistics. It speaks volumes. Well, probably not shock, because then, yes, we all know that very many Kenyans were rendered jobless. But, this report comes to expose the numerous discrepancies that we witnessed today, and also, just painting a clear picture of what the situation is like, much as maybe we might not be able to know this.
You know, Linda, the situation in Kenya when it comes to unemployment was already worse.
Yeah.
And so Corona has just, things are more complicated than before. And even I doubt those numbers. They might be higher than that because I believe most of they are looking at those formal jobs or what they can categorize. But there are mama mbogas who currently cannot pay back their loan, and therefore they are not selling their vegetables as they would.
Yeah.
You realize right now we are talking about when you talk about, for example, restaurants and bar being closed, restaurants, of course, partially and so on. And some of them have not gone back to business. Think of education. Education not only employs teachers, but non-teaching staff, suppliers, and so on. So realize the situation. We are just hoping that the government will help to come up with economic revival measures that will really help normal Kenya.
And 11,500 new jobs for teachers as 1,000 are promoted. This is contrary to what this report speaks about. A sigh of relief for most of the teachers and equally those ones who are in the teaching fraternity and would love to join.
You know, when I was growing up,
yeah,
teaching was the profession that in my community everyone would embrace. But even at some particular point, I thought of I need to go for But the way the government, really treat our profession. You talk about doctors, talk about teachers, talk about nurses.
Right.
Sometimes you don't understand what is the logic, what really informs their decision-making process.
Yeah.
And especially that TSC has had issues. I don't understand them. They really seems to be really trying to take Mwalimu down. And all of us have gone through Mwalimu. And therefore we need to, as a country, we need to focus on people who really make this country. And teachers need to be given a priority.
Yeah.
It's like taking and giving. They are taking from one hand and they're telling you they're giving you. So, and in this country, many schools do not have adequate staffing. And you can be sure, now when we are moving to this competence-based, we'll have the same issues. And yet we are trying to improve our education quality. It's not about exam alone. It's about adequate teachers, enough classrooms, and enough resources in general.
And that exactly is also what has been captured on the front page of the Daily Nation. 11,000 jobs lined up for teachers. 1,000 teachers with higher qualifications are also set to get promotions and getting ready for reopening. This is said by TSC that it is seeking to fill 11,574 vacancies in a move aimed at easing the chronic staffing crisis in public schools. Secondary schools will be the main beneficiaries of 5,000 new teachers, while primary schools will have the biggest number of teachers hired to replace those who have exited the service. What of private schools, actually?
One of the things I really I've gone through a private school. So one of the things that I think in this country we have not come up with a very good framework when it comes to private schools. And therefore, some of them, greedy individuals decided, this is the route to go. And therefore, sometimes we have problems with teachers in those private schools because they're only paid when students or people are going to school. And when they close, they don't get paid. And therefore, we don't have a law that protects even these teachers in private schools. The government assumes since you decide to open a school, you should decide to join as a student or a teacher, and we know there is no employment, then they should cover themselves. But I believe the government should be able to come up with measures to cushion these private schools because they contribute a lot to the economy and they contribute a lot to, they help the government in these matters of education because we cannot all be absorbed in public schools.
Okay, well, as we wait to see what will happen, still we're finding reports that after COVID-19, there are likelihoods that most of the private schools will have closed down, courtesy of the scenario that we see today and the difficulties that they experience trying to sail through or trying to stay afloat. But that aside, still on matters of Obado, I think we have already expounded some more on that. No boundary review before 2022, says IEBC. That's also an interesting one. And I mean, it still remains a question as how capable is IEBC to sail us through or to take us through a referendum, let alone an election.
IEBC will never be stable as long as politicians' interests are still alive. I don't know. Do we have even IEBC? That's the first thing. That body is in shambles. And I'm wondering, when we are really clamoring for even the Constitution, why we have not, I believe the first thing that the handshake should have done is to fix that, because that's where the problems comes for this country. And the moment we don't fix our political problems, then you can be sure we are going to have issues with our economical problems, our social life, and so on. And therefore, IEBC need to be fixed as soon as possible. If we go through the same cycle, and the Kriegler report, talked about, at least 2 years before a general election, we should have fixed our IEBC. Right now, nobody's talking about it. These good leaders of ours are just focusing on the other interests, and this is where we always have problems. So we really need to fix, we need to be serious as a country.
Okay, well, that we leave it aside. Some of the key stories also captured on the front page. This one right here, U.S. woman may have been cured of HIV, infected with HIV in 1992. She may be the first person to get cured of the virus without a bone marrow transplant on medication. That one has been captured on page 9. Must be an interesting story. I'm sure you'd want to grab a copy and get to experience the read. And COVID-19 worsens job crisis with 13 million now out of work. I think we've also touched on that. And also Trump losing military support ahead of the poll. Just 37.4% of active personnel in the U.S. military support the President Donald Trump's re-election, while 43.1% back his Democratic opponent, or that is Joe Biden, according to the poll. That's an interesting poll right there, even as the U.S. prepares for an election. Let's cross over to the People Daily and take a look at the front page of the People Daily. Still more or less the same on the matters of graft right here in the country. That is, the Obado saga continues. And yes, let's try and see whether we're able to open that. But meanwhile, as we try to get a hold of it, I don't know, on that very last story, what do you make of Trump's scenario? Yes, we have the page, but then again, it's only fair share that we get to hear from you on, the playouts that are happening in the United States as they prepare for an election. They're going to set precedents in regards to different countries holding elections at this time of COVID-19.
The dynamics here and there are a little bit different.
Yeah. But
I'm looking forward to see how, as Trump will call him, Sleepy Joe will do. Trump seems to enjoy support of the whites there, and Trump is a true reflection of what Americans want. We might not agree on this with many people, but it's funny in politics that the person who seems to be uncultured, if I may use that word, the person who seems to be aggressive attracts people a lot. I think people are moving away. They don't like sober individuals, and you've seen that in the country. Mm-hmm. You look at the support base of Trump, and you wonder, this is the America America. I think is changing, and I'm happy that Trump presidency is bringing out the true reflection of these so-called superpowers. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, I'm not sure. I don't, but I think Trump might win this election.
All right, well, we wait to see what will happen right there. It's an interesting session for the United States, and we keep following and keep you to tabs on the same. Badu's moment of truth, I think captured on page 4, is something we've discussed. 12,000 teachers or teaching jobs up for grabs is also something that we have discussed. And Shabab terrorist in Al-Adi KDF attack surrenders. And yes, 1 million have lost jobs of COVID-19. It's more or less the same stories that we keep talking about. But also an interesting story that is of importance. I don't know, we lost Arnold? We have him? All right, yes, and here we are. Haji wants order stopping Mwilu prosecution lifted. DCJ or successfully petition to bar employer from insinuating or instituting, disciplinary proceedings against Mwilu. I think we've had these cases in most cases of course, questionable integrity on the leadership that we have, and the Deputy Chief Justice, that is Philomena Mwilu, is off the hook. And at some point in time, we also had numerous judges being incriminated, but for the longest of time, the cases went underwater, and now we're having these conversations that in a way are, come in to sanitize or come in to get these individuals off the hook. What do you make of it, and what does it speak of us ever attaining, integrity on the leadership that we have, maintaining what is enshrined in Article 6 of the Constitution?
If the DPP had given me a job to advise him on which case to strategically position himself, I would have told him the Deputy CJ case should have been handled differently. And you cannot come for us, and these are judges, because if you can go for their boss, they are thinking, you're going to come for us. And then these people will challenge you. They'll make your work, tedious. And therefore, I did not expect this case to go far. I knew we will have a lot of legal hurdles and other issues. And I think the DPP should have been very careful going for of course, the Deputy CJ. And we are not saying that he shouldn't go for big fish, but you need to be strategically positioned. The judges that are going, how do you prosecute your senior? It becomes very hard. And therefore, they will look for all loopholes to make sure this case doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
So we are just in the same scenario for a country where we protect our brothers and sisters.
Right, and a very interesting story right here. Kangata House team yet to resolve revenue stalemate is a story that we'll look at later on the broadcast. We started a little bit late on the newspaper review, but all the same, I am convinced that we've touched on the key stories that would be of interest to you. It's now time that we cross over to a different segment altogether. Thank you so much, Arnold, for the great insights, as we look forward to have you some other time. Let's now cross over to a different segment that is later after this short break. Make sure to keep it right here. welcome back to the broadcast. Important that you're part of this discussion. Hashtag Morning Cafe at Linda_Alela at TV47 KE. It's now, yes, like I said, for the time for the current affairs segment, where we take a look at the stories that have been making headlines, and we have a comprehensive conversation revolving around them. Joining me for the same is Gloria Oroba, who's a youth policy analyst, and governance expert Joseph Simeha to expound some more on that. Morning, lady and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good to have you. All right, now let's kickstart the conversation, and we all know that, again, we cannot have a current affairs conversation. It revolves around the country without mentioning the case that is ongoing in regards to matters graft charges that are leveled against Migori Governor Okoth Obado alongside his children and his close allies, and of course the family members of the close allies. Now, ODM party have kicked on the impeachment motion, or talk of an impeachment motion. And coming to you, Gloria, I don't know what you make of the conversations that have been ongoing at this particular time on matters graft in the country, even before we delve deep into, that question of Obado.
I think it's good that we are actually seeing traction in terms of the arrests, in terms of actual follow-through, and as much as they're getting bail, and their legal representatives are really trying their best to see what they can get them out of. I am glad that finally it's not only the aspect of them being arrested, but also how are we holding them accountable in terms of holding office. To see ODM as a party come out strong and say that we have to impeach Obado is also a reaction, because a lot of people had been speculating that suddenly, because of ODM's position, or the statements that Edwin Sifuna actually put out as the Secretary General, there seems to be confusion on, is ODM supporting graft or not. So I think this is them coming out strong and saying we are not going to support corruption. And as a matter of fact, now that Obado has actually been arrested, and it looks like there is substantial evidence for a case to proceed, and in any case he has actually been barred out of office. So ODM is saying, yes, why not impeach him? And then remember, over 40, I think, is it 42 MCAs out of 42 MCAs, is it 41?
37, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, they have the majority of the MCAs. So, I mean, I can imagine looking at it, trying to pass an impeachment motion might be a walk in the park. So, and they've already embraced the idea that in the event that they successfully impeach him, they're actually going to allow for the deputy governor to, take office. After all, I think what is happening is that even as a party, ODM is realizing that their position in terms of graft, in terms of corruption, has to be very strong, and it has to be clear that they are against corruption. They are not going to defend their own when it comes to that.
Let me come in and loop Joseph Simeha on the same. Is it a question of ODM realizing that, yes, they are against corruption, or it is a question of, politics? Because recently we've seen Obado categorically, registering his interest on backing or also working together with the deputy president.
I think what really matters is, first of all, let me say very clearly that issues of corruption ought to be issues of politics.
Yeah.
That we should stop saying that, politics cannot come in. In fact, we will be a lot more effective in fighting corruption in this country.
All right.
If and when we put a political price, a very heavy political price, on corruption.
But just how genuine is that? Well, I know that is the ultimate goal, but sometimes when you see politics crippling in, I mean, most of the leaders are not genuine in terms of defending, or are not genuine in terms of castigating the individuals in question.
I think you should measure the genuineness in relation to what ODM thinks with regards to two things.
Yeah.
One, how the voters, ODM supporters in Migori and elsewhere will react. And secondly, how ODM will be perceived generally in politics after losing this governor. Now, it would appear to me that the signals the party has received from voters in Migori, and this is very important, is that they would be okay with that. If it wasn't sure, if the leadership of the party wasn't sure that that the voters in Migori, the ODM supporters in Migori and in that neighborhood would be okay with Obado being impeached, they would hesitate.
Yeah.
So I'm pointing out this deliberately, Linda, that it is so important that it finally rests with the people. The people to be, whatever we need to fear, whatever political leaders need to fear, whatever high public officials need to fear, is the people of the Republic of Kenya.
Right.
And that signal needs to be sent to parties all the time that if you do not do this, and that is if you don't really show true commitment to fighting corruption, it will cost you politically.
Mm-hmm. All right. And speaking of the same, let's overlook that aspect of ODM and look into the aspect of, Senate's mixed reactions on a ruling that, of course, was set last year. It was said to bar governors facing charges from accessing their office. In what has turned out to be a different conversation, the Senate says that, this is unfair because then the conversation should take that direction, in comparison to what is enshrined in the Constitution that, an individual is innocent until they're proven guilty. So barring the governors from accessing their offices before the courts themselves get to declare them guilty, according to the senators, is an unfair move, and maybe the ruling should be looked into. And maybe we have a reverse of the same. Gloria, what do you make of this talk of the senators? Is it because, yes, again, politically they know that they are headed to governorship?
Definitely, that's one of the reasons why they'd be opposing it. But I would like to think of it this way: if there are very heavy allegations that I am a corrupt leader,
yeah,
and the only way to prove that I am not corrupt is through the dealings of my office. Now, if I'm allowed to keep that office and continue operating and having access to that office, and then to the extent that I might interfere with the evidence in any court of law, if there's a risk that the alleged person who's in question might interfere with the evidence that is there, definitely the thing that the courts are allowed to do is actually make sure that that does not happen. So for me, I see barring anyone from office is because they have reasonable a reasonable explanation to show that indeed you can interfere with the evidence that is there to prove your innocence and to prove otherwise. So if you're fighting that you should not be barred from office, are you trying to say that you're already guilty and so you want to make sure that you're tampering with that evidence? What I think also should be done is that same level of the restrictions that we are putting on the governors, we should also put that level of restrictions on our cabinet secretaries. We should put it on anyone who's actually holding a public office, whether on senior level or on junior level, because as well on junior level, if there are any allegations, you are suspended indefinitely until they can clear your name. But when you look at what is happening at the Ministry of Health, Mutahi Kagwe is still accessing his office, and yet there has been allegations that he's been involved in the KEMSA haste. So, I mean, for me, it is the law cuts across. And if we're going to put measures that are going to make sure that public funds are not lost through our governors, through our senators and elected leaders, we should also look at it from the executive and also ensure that the cabinet secretaries, the permanent secretaries, the CASs and all those in senior level to that point are also facing the same restrictions.
All right. And speaking of which, again, looking at the same scenario and, just trying to expound some more on what really bedevils the counties. Many have argued that corruption has been devolved, which, yes, is still a question of debate. But looking at the deputy governors, there's been that conversation that, again, deputy governors are always out there trying to paint a bad picture of their bosses, so at least they would get space. Of late, we've seen the deputy governor of Migori equally coming out so strong. And much as we all acknowledge that, yes, in the absence of the governor, he takes the help, it looks like, it is clear and evident that this is what is probably most of the deputies will be waiting for. And we've seen a lot of witch hunt that has been propagated to see off or to see to it that they root out the governor so they can pick up the position. How best can this be handled, in as much as maybe you say that, yes, politics has to play in every time that we're dealing with graft? Simeha.
First of all, just to throw my 2 cents worth of in the earlier question you asked
on the senators, yes.
The question of trust, an office of public trust, is so important that for anyone to serve effectively in an office of public trust, they must enjoy the trust of the people.
Yeah.
Now, it's such that our national character is so bad that even when there are heavy allegations weighing on your shoulders, on your head, we still insist that I will stay in office, to an extent of one minister infamously saying he'd rather die than resign. It is not that it is showing that you are guilty. By stepping aside, it's not a show of guilt. It is a recognition of the fact that these allegations cloud your ability to serve the public effectively. And therefore, you ought to say that this is not my private office, it's not my private business. The people for whom I serve here may not be assured that I will serve them well with this burden on my head. Let me discharge this burden first. And if I discharge it effectively, I can come back and serve the people. And it is because of our bad national character that it forces the judiciary to make those kind of decisions for us and force us to stay out of office when we have these allegations weighing on us. Now, if I quickly go to the question you asked on deputy governors, ideally it should be that the deputy governors, just like deputy president, are principal assistants of the chief executive of the county, meaning that they run the county together. The governor provides leadership, the deputy assists. That anytime, not just because of graft, not because of illness, anytime the deputy can step in and provide leadership, the governor can give space. The governor can actually take leave and give space to the deputy to provide leadership for certain times, meaning that they would have developed a relationship of trust. But again, I go back to our question, our problem of national character. Because we have this problem in this country of very bad national character with regards to public office. Two people go into an office that they should be running in public trust, but the main person sees it as his or her personal office, that they cannot allow anybody else to know what goes on in his or her office. Yet this is an office of public trust. So it's a bigger question of our national character that then forces deputy governors to stay in the shadows because they're afraid that if they step forward and show any sign of leadership, it is perceived as attempting to overshadow their boss. That should not be a question because those two offices are offices of public trust. Those two people are not working for themselves. They are working for the citizens of the Republic of Kenya. They are working for the county. So it is very right, as the law says, that regardless of the circumstances, if a governor is unable to discharge his or her responsibilities in office, regardless of whether they like the deputy or not, the deputy should step in and take over the mandate.
Okay. Well, interesting view, and is a case that we're following up closely, and we'll be right here to update you on the events or the developments of the same. Parliamentary watchdogs equally call for the ouster of governors in graft cases. They encourage the members of the county assembly to take charge and, come on board with impeachment motions of these individuals, which again is something that has brought a lot of question mark in regards to the numerous cases that we've witnessed across different counties. And you find that, 3/4 of the governors are, facing allegations of corruption. So leaves a lot to be decided. But that aside, still on the level of the counties, there's been a stalemate. And for the longest of time, it's been hard for the Senate to resolve this stalemate on sharing of revenue across the counties. And as though we all thought that this is finally out, or this is finally over, based on the conversation that was there, that there's been this committee that has been set, and the committee is set to give us solutions. And sometimes last week, it looked like, there was a white smoke. But then again, the committee comes out to tell us that, they are yet to get a resolve on the same. Gloria, what do you make of this left on back and forth on matters sharing of revenue at the level of the county? Is it that hard?
I don't think it's that hard. I'm actually very disappointed because I was hoping once they had the 12-member committee and with the personalities that were in there and they were exuding a lot of positivity in terms of, we are going to put the politics out. I mean, we saw Murkomen tweeting on, finally let the people say, be listened to. And I had so much hope. I actually thought it was a matter of finally going back to sitting, there a little bit of give and take without any interference from the executive or without any interference from political figures, because there was alleged interference from the Prime Minister and orders from above. And I thought that once they said, okay, this thing is ours, it's back to the Senate where it should belong, and, truly for us to debate and figure out this population versus land masses, I really thought that it would have taken them a week and they would come out and say, okay, we've agreed to compromise on this level when it comes to, the ASAL areas and come back to this. I don't think it's that hard. I actually now, I have to say that I was wrong, and I feel as though now what is happening is it is a clash of personalities and it is becoming a sort of show of might, because most of the people who are in that committee have got bigger ambitions outside from Senate. And they probably feel this is an opportune time to show my prowess in my politics and how much I can rally against or for. And it's really, I really don't think that it's about the actual formula.
Yeah.
So having said that, I also, now, we have to start questioning what happens if the stalemate takes too long, What then? Because the counties at one point would have used their 50%, which they are allowed to access. At one point, you actually have to budget in the future, knowing what kind of revenue you're going to receive as a county. And above and beyond that, during this pandemic, this is a time when you need to be sure on the budget lines that you have on issues such as health, on issues such as education, because those are the two hardest hit public services that government should be giving the people. So I'm starting to be anxious, and I can imagine that a lot of Kenyans are anxious because they are saying now, this thing is stuck. So what now? Should we call on the executive? Should we? I mean, I'm disappointed. I'm truly disappointed about what's going on.
All right. I don't know whether Simiha is equally as disappointed. Why is it so hard for the Senate to get a solution? Why is it taking so long for us to get answers as to this, even as, yes, the counties continue to grapple with tough times?
It is taking so long and appearing so hard because the drama we are seeing is constituted from what I would call this distributive software in the question of shared prosperity in this nation. The constitutive hardware, because the software depends on the hardware, how we've constituted how this nation shares its prosperity and its opportunities to participate in productivity. Unless we revisit that constitutive hardware, surely, we are not going to agree on the distributive software. Listen, we are pretending to be fighting over 316 or thereabout billion shillings out of a national budget of more than 3 trillion Kenya shillings. Is that real? No. I think there's a lot of dishonesty. I think there's a lot of dishonesty in this debate. And when you consider how some people frame it, when you hear, for example, some people frame it as Mount Kenya versus this, or these people versus those, or pastoralists, but when it should be about the Kenyan Senate discussing about allocation of resources to Kenyan counties, then you begin to understand the betrayals that are fueled by dishonesty. This is why that debate in the Senate will not solve the problem. The problem is deeper. We therefore need a deeper national solution, which to me is a national dialogue on shared productivity and shared prosperity. We need to undo and redo the hardware for sharing what we call the national cake, and not just sharing, first of all, baking it, everyone having an opportunity to participate. Kenyans truly owning the economy of the Republic of Kenya, Kenyans truly owning the means of production for themselves, and Kenyans sharing the fruits of that production. So we are debating over a very small aspect, and for me it's just what I call the software, the distributive software, but we're leaving the constitutive hardware intact. This problem will recur again and again and again.
All right, speaking of recurring, and the conversation on ground again revolves around getting the solution as at now. Something that has been looked at as a common phenomenon when leaders are addressing issues, that the leader who is there, or the leadership at hand, will always get short-term solutions to crucial issues, knowing very well that after a while they probably are not going to be there. Why is it always the case in most cases? And like you see, we know very well that this is enshrined in the Constitution. There needs to be a lasting solution into the same, or a lasting deliberation on this particular issue. But then again, most of the senators bring out proposals that revolve around a short-term approach of the matter. Gloria?
I think that's because most of the senators are actually elected leaders. The only thing that is really in their mind once they get into office is how to come back again into office. So they're not really thinking about in the event that I don't come back to office, how are these policies going to affect me as a commoner, as a civilian, as a person who's not in elective office. So you'll find that the decisions right now are driven with, I have ambitions to become a governor. I absolutely must be the person that decided during the stalemate that I swayed a certain decision to the favor of the people that I'm hoping to elect it. So some of these people are actually already building their manifestos with the activities that are happening now in terms of policies and in terms of taking positions on certain debates at the House. So, and we can't, I don't think that is a thing we can change overnight. I think it's a thing that we can change in terms of the culture of the elected leaders. And that culture of elected leaders can only change when we stop electing this caliber of leaders. So it goes back to the people, as my colleague says again. It's about the people. We have to focus on the people, but also the people have a responsibility to be very aware on what is happening right now with the elected leaders that we voted in, so that by the time 2022 comes in, I don't have a selective amnesia and a sudden urge to just vote the popular person at the moment. I have to remember that it took over 9 sittings for the Senate to actually agree on how they are going to spend my money on my services. And when I say that, it's my money because I'm the tax payer on my services, because it is me who's waiting for ambulances to be able to call so that I can be taken in case I have COVID-19. It's me who's waiting for education for my children. So, I mean, when we bring it down that whatever is happening in these houses is happening because of me as the civilian who elected this person, then we'll start seeing, in fact, what I'm really hoping the civil society and me included in there is that I'm hoping now, since we've given these leaders so much time to figure out, and we've seen that they're incapable of coming up with a formula that is a win-win, then it's time for us to now come out and say, okay, if you guys can't do it, we might as well put in our steering committee with representatives and see how well to intervene, because it is us who are being affected.
And lastly, on the very same, with a political eye to this, and I think it started on that note where, yes, there are senators who have interest of getting to the gubernatorial position in 2022 and even in years to come. And, you know, in most cases, they're looking at their regions and how they're going to represent their regions. Some arguing that, of course, they equally look at the monies that are going to be presented to them when they are top of the helm. With this political eye, are we really going to get a genuine solution on this one, Simeha?
We may not. For whatever it takes, I'm sure there will be some solution. And by the way, the fact that the Senate is not rising to the occasion doesn't mean there's not a solution, because there is a solution in law. The current formula continues until the Senate eventually, decides to be reasonable and they agree and give us a solution. But nevertheless, even if they don't, because of what you point out, political interests and so on and so forth, which, by the way, interests are what drives politics. If only these senators were coming and their party leaders were coming out openly declaring their interests, and then we negotiate these interests in an open atmosphere, rather than this conjecture, this dishonesty, and so on. It wouldn't be a problem. But because, as Linda there says, they come in pretending, putting on a face of pretense, but behind that face of pretense, they're driven by certain interests, which would be better if they would just speak openly and negotiate these interests as Kenyans. They articulate these interests and negotiate them as Kenyans on behalf of Kenyans. And ultimately, then we get a solution.
Will we get a balanced solution, or say a solution that will probably impress a majority of Kenyans, because they are on the quest for getting, equity for all the counties? Is it even realistic?
Yes. I said earlier that what is in Senate just now is defective. By the way, I said that it's a formula and a process of sharing out resources premised on a defective and unfair and equitable constitutive framework or constitutive hardware. So for now, I am sure we can get a prudent decision coming out of Senate. I'm sure that we can get something we can live with, but we have to seize a political opportunity to rediscuss, to revisit our history as a nation. Because if we had got it right, even with the Constitution, we wouldn't be where we are. It should be working. I know also that, you can give a good Constitution to terrible people and they'll mess it up, as has happened in this country. But also, if we could do it better in terms of our constitutive mechanism, framework, I think it will cut out the mischief in future. And that's why, in my opinion, we have to seize every opportunity, particularly to resolve the national question, the political question. It's bigger than what we are seeing in Senate. When you see people panic, some of them it's because they have always taken shelter in whatever in the fact that it is their person. They take comfort in the fact that, the president is our person, so we are fine. You see them panic, not because they have had trust in individuals, not in the system. Shouldn't we be stopping as Kenyans and saying, hold on, for how long will we live like this? Can we talk to each other and sort out the system through which we govern ourselves, so that whenever we are faced with this kind of software issues, it is so easy to resolve. But because of the anxiety and mistrust, it is so difficult until we get back to sitting together to resolve the national question.
Okay, and we leave that aside as we all wait to see what will happen. We cross over to this month, and we're all privy to how the curve has been, shooting up and flattening, every other day. The Ministry of Health is treating us to, the information that is at hand, telling us the numbers and how they are, and of course continuing to call upon Kenyans to be, privy to what is there, and most importantly, to abide by the guidelines that have been set. Of late, we have witnessed, a lower trajectory on, numbers going down on matters COVID-19, which in most cases would be looked at as, a sigh of relief, would be looked at as a positive thing. But World Health Organization, on the other hand, says that it's still too early to celebrate. First of all, Gloria, what do you make of the flat numbers that we are treated to of late, and not overlooking again the aspect of politics as it stands, or the interests on matters politics in the country?
There is a very laughable and funny tweet, or is it meme, that going around saying Dennis Okari stopped Corona, and he brought a cure. After the big expose and everything, the curve started to flatten, and then the numbers dropped. This speaks a lot on what the public thinks in terms of trusting the numbers that are being presented to them by government. Of course, there has been a lot of ongoing activities around grafts, loss of funds and things like that. So I'll speak to it from a point of politics, and then also from a point of public trust. Now, from my point of politics is we're very well aware that there's when Corona came in, a lot of there were things that were ongoing. For instance, the BBI campaigns were they were at the peak, and we were starting to see them start getting that traction and everything. And then, of course, Corona came, and we had to go on lockdown. And the lockdown, according to me, has facilitated a lot of things, has facilitated a lot of behind-the-scene political mobilization. It has been a time when politicians have started to understand, okay, now we can go and do our usual public rallies. What now? How do we keep relevance? It's also during this time that we have been subjected to a lot of very awkward moments between the president and the deputy president, because of course, as a nation, you are expecting to have a front that would show solidarity, and there has been questionable instances in terms of how the first announcements were being put together. Just recently, we saw that allegedly the deputy president was cut off during a conference or talking about post-COVID and how we have handled it. Yeah. So, I mean, there have been, I would say that certain politicians have been creative enough to take this opportunity to ride the political wave and create new inroads and different allies. And you know, it started to feel like this is no longer about us as Kenyans, and we are being told to sit in the house and stay put and, you know, sanitize, while we are seeing other people holding meetings, while we were seeing other political events ongoing, and from certain divides were allowed, the other ones were not allowed. So I would say it was very interesting to see how politics still evolves no matter what, whether it is a lockdown, no matter whether it is a pandemic. Politics will be politics, and the politicians will do their thing. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to the health, from the perspective now of the health, I don't believe in these numbers, and that is my personal opinion, because, and to put the point out, I actually got my son out of school 2 weeks before Corona was announced in Kenya, because I had started reading a lot about it and stuff like that. But at one point I realized we were going about it the wrong way, because up till now, Linda, we don't have, as we are looking to go back to school, to open up the economy fully, to, you know, remove the restrictions, we are not doing anything different other than the masks and the hand sanitizers. So if that's all it took for us to open the economy, by the time we started wearing the masks and using the sanitizers, we could have already let the economy continue thriving in whatever forms that it could. So for me, on a health perspective, I don't trust those numbers. I actually think that those numbers have to drop, because we have received a lot of negative publicity in terms of our government, like from the donor community, and we've also, it's starting to shine a light in places that our government would not really want that light to go. So of course the numbers have to go down. The curve has to be flattened, and that's my personal opinion on this number.
Joseph Simeha, not just Gloria's personal sentiments, but equally the sentiments of numerous Kenyans out here, you know, who after observing the trends, after observing what is happening across the global fraternity, they come to that point where they conclude, you know what, probably there is literally not no corona, or if it is there, then at least what it is that we're being fed in terms of numbers, in terms of information in the country, is not being done in the right way, is probably not the right information that should be given. What does it speak moving on?
I think first of all, it's just to confirm that I hold the same opinion, and I often advise people that it's the patriotic duty of every well-informed citizen never to trust their government. Do not trust what they tell you. Check it out. Only after you have confirmed, then you can offer your government support. You do have a patriotic duty to always put pressure and do not trust. Because the moment you begin to trust, blindly, without questioning critically, without pushing and forcing them to come out of those closets, they continue to take advantage of you. And especially a government of our government, with a nation with such a national character like we do have in this country. Mm-hmm. So more specifically with regards to coronavirus, I would say that be cautious. We've seen more than enough evidence. I'll only speak about one thing. Linda has spoken about one other. I'll speak about one thing. Just revisit about 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, the frenzy about beds. That each county, 300 beds, and there's a frenzy, and they drive out a frenzy. And Linda, all that is about tenderpreneurship. It's about tenders. Yeah. It's about procurement. Instead of there being a frenzy about informing citizens educating citizens, developing and strengthening our preventive and primary health care in the county, investing in community health workers, investing in public health workers. There's a frenzy about what you can procure. I hope they, by the way, bought the 500 beds from the young man in Kiambu. So there's that frenzy. They create all these things for procurement and tenders. Beware of a government that behaves the way our government behaves. And it's best, actually, it's patriotic duty to be skeptical, don't trust, assume you are on your own, and continue with the precautions. At least these precautions, they are there universally. We will not doubt this coronavirus because we've seen the effects of coronavirus all over the world.
Yes.
So it is best to take extreme precautions, like washing hands and basically sanitation, sanitizing, having masks on, social distancing, and any other reasonable precaution you can take as you watch the drama that is happening in government. Look, one final thing, Linda, we have had so much drama from Magoha about schools from March 2020. You do not see anything at all in terms of preparation for any possible reopening of schools. You do not know, you see anything. You continue hearing these dramatic statements from his mouth, speaking sometimes from both sides of the mouth, but you do not see anything going into a process of preparing the education sector that involves the government, teachers, parents, and schools preparing for a possible reopening, as you see in other places. That tells you where this government is with regards to your safety and your health. We are pretty much on our own until we seize a moment. Again, I go back to it. As a nation, we seize a moment, by the way, to have a national discourse on where have we gone wrong, how can we make it right. I'll slip in one quick thing. During that close down, when Linda speaks about BBI rallies and so on going down, there was some silver lining on that cloud. I'm privy to information that it was now even better for BBI because could come before that steering committee soberly, without costume, without songs, without shouting in rallies and so on, and come and soberly present their issues, soberly discuss their interests, make proposals and so on and so forth. I should hope that if and when they bring back BBI on the table, that is how we proceed. And we don't go back to dancing and shouting and insulting each other, but talking with each other as a nation.
All right. And briefly, just to wind up on this particular subject, yes, Gloria, as you top up on what you went to say, equally address this one. The very same government that we're talking about, the very same government that has interest, is equally the same government that is tasked to deal with the KEMSA case that we're talking about, graft case. Just how possible is it for us to get answers and, have some of these people charged, recovery of the assets and, monies that were lost?
I think we can't run away from a government that we elected. We elected this government, and it's the same way I kept on telling people: you elected Sonko, you elected Sakaja, you elected these people. We went to the polling stations and we voted for these people in. And if we don't want these people, it is also our duty for us to say, actually, we are tired of this government. We go back to the constitution, look for legal ways to now say we are tired and what next, and if there's anything we can do, because we elected this government. It's not a government that came in by force or by coup or by, we had elections. So, and on the point on, whether we should, for me, I don't look at it as don't trust your government and it is your responsibility. How I see it is okay to be critical. Being critical doesn't mean that I don't trust you. It means that there are actions that you might be taking and I am questionable about, the end results or how they are being taken. So being critical of a government is not necessarily a negative thing, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't trust your leaders. We have to trust the systems that we put in place, because those systems, even now, as we are thinking about a referendum, it is us who are putting those systems in place. It is not a colonial system from somewhere. Now, in terms of KEMSA, do we trust our government to hold these people accountable? These alleged thugs, murderers, if you want to say. Well, our constitution, which we brought in place, it brought devolution in terms of we have the executive, we have the judiciary, we have the legislature, and also we have independent arms such as the EACC. So we are hoping that, and I'm speaking from a very informed perspective in terms of a civilian, I am personally hoping that for once during this period where we are executing this constitution that we have had for 10 years, that we finally get to see the separation of powers. We get to see these independent systems, whether it is the judiciary or the anti-corruption commissions, DPP, and the other systems, acting independent of influence from legislature or from the executive. Meaning, if there have been names of certain people who have been mentioned as being a part of the COVID-19 heist, the COVID billionaires, whether they are related to the Chief Justice, whether they are related to the President or the Deputy President, what we want to see is finally that element of separation of powers within this constitution, that it doesn't matter who you are affiliated to, but there's enough evidence to hold you accountable, to actually convict you. We would like to see you in prison. We would like to see you not only in prison, but your assets frozen. And in fact, not only frozen and then we forget about them somewhere, they're sitting there waiting to be stolen back by, the same caliber of thugs, but frozen and turned into property of the public. So if you have gone and bought a hotel somewhere with stolen public funds, can we see that completely taken out of your power and actually turned into some sort of public facility, like it can be our what do you call it, post-COVID-19 research center, or they're trying to put an emergency kind of thing. The rejoinder I wanted to put on the COVID-19 is I know that now there's a lot of talk on of more steering committees on post-COVID-19. And that's fine, because there's justification for it on how to handle another pandemic if it comes or stuff like that, as much as we have emergency bodies for that. I think that money that we are spending on post-COVID-19 steering committees or agencies or whatever, they should really think through on the outputs. What are we intending to achieve from these steering committees? Are we actually going to finally come out with a resiliency plan such that if the pandemic comes back the second time, we actually know step 1, shut down the border, step 2, from the lessons learned.
All right, and Kenyans continue to bear the brunt of the same, and all this that we have highlighted as the ills that have come along courtesy of COVID-19. A report yesterday by the Kenya Bureau of Statistics says that 1.7 million Kenyans have been jobless since April up until now, in between. And we all thought that we were going to stay afloat. But it looks like, times are getting tougher and tougher for the Kenyans. And you know what? A majority of them have decided, let's overlook this and let's go out there and try and fend for ourselves, because clearly the government is not going to do that. Don't you think then that Kenyans are justified, Joseph Simera, to again flout the rules that have been set by the Ministry of Health, just so they would at least guarantee themselves, a life, or guarantee themselves, time and moment to stay afloat?
I would say that except where, the rules are unreasonable, overall for me, the rules are reasonable. They are for our safety. They are for our own safety and our good health. And it's important that we observe them. Except that I absolutely can understand this frustration that you put in place these restrictive rules, but you don't put in place any form of mitigation that then would make it possible for us to survive and to continue to have means of livelihoods, that we continue to sustain our livelihoods even as we wait out this, because it appears we are just waiting out this crisis. So I would advise that people observe these restrictions, do what they can do to survive. I mean, Linda, is not any different. This is how we have been. This situation, this crisis only made things worse. But Kenyans have largely been on their own, especially for the last 7 years or so. We've largely been on our own with regards to sources of livelihood, the economy, jobs, youth opportunities to participate in the economy, and so on and so forth. But I would say that, again, rather than the agitation being for just survival, like how do we survive from today to tomorrow, I think the agitation should be how do we take advantage of this crisis so that, it's not just a health crisis, it's a governance crisis. How do we take advantage of this crisis to revisit where we came from and begin to talk about how we make a better Kenya so that any other form of pandemic, any other form of shock finds a better system in place, finds a better governance and political system in place. The weakest point for us, in my opinion, is a broken political system, is a broken system of governance. This is why I say don't trust automatically without questioning. Question, verify, and after you confirm, you can now give your support. So for me, let the noise be about, can this crisis force us to stop as Kenyans? Not in a frenzy of should we change the constitution or not? Should we do this or not? In a frenzy of can we talk? How come this crisis found us in such a vulnerable position, yet we could be better as Kenyans? And then from this, we develop a better national character, we develop a better political system, we develop, inshallah, a better governance system. Then we can begin to hold each other accountable.
And for the longest of time, still on that note, speaking of our systems and developing the best of the health sector, these are reports that are coming out from Kenyans, and having had conversations with them on ground, some of them argue that even at some point in time, the government argued that Kenyans do not want to go and seek medical advice because so much fear had been instilled in them in regards to COVID-19. But a majority of Kenyans will tell you today that again they go to hospitals and all the energy has been channeled towards COVID-19 talk, and they literally get the services on the issues that have taken them, different from COVID-19. You go there with a different condition. It is hectic. Some of them say that they go there in, day out. You're told, go fix your NHIF. You're told, go back, come tomorrow. Or the doctors are on strike. Or this and this and this. And it becomes hard for them. What does it speak? What does it tell us, even as we say that, yes, indeed, COVID-19 is here and we need to deal with it? Gloria.
That's just an example of what Kenyans are going through every day, even before COVID-19. One thing that you have to understand is we are talking about 13-point-something million Kenyans having lost their jobs after COVID-19 has come in between the month of May and July. But look at the percentage of Kenyans that were not employed to begin with. If 75% of the youth are actually, if the 75% of our population is the youth, then, and our population is say about 50 million, then you're talking about over 37 million Kenyans are youth. And on that 37 million Kenyans, 70% of that is unemployed. This is statistics before COVID-19. So already we had millions of dependents, because I have finished my education, I'm even 20-something, 25, 26, all the way to 35, and I'm unemployed. So that means I'm either depending on somebody else who has basic minimum pay. Now, what COVID-19 has done is, now those few, the certain few that were actually employed, their jobs have now been taken away. So if you had a percentage of dependents who are literally surviving because of the basic pay of these workers, now you have definitely more than 50% of your population just struggling to breathe up and get some oxygen to survive. So they might not die of COVID-19, but they will die of poverty, they'll die of hunger, they will die of other diseases such like pneumonia, because they have probably been kicked out of their houses. They can no longer afford the rent, whether it is 500 shillings or 2,000 shillings. So when we are just deciding to say that COVID-19 is here, we are going to focus on COVID-19 and this is what we are doing, without contextualizing where our country was prior to COVID-19 and how many people were actually even surviving in that economy, we need to really think, is this a reality, or are we living in a bubble? And when you're looking at the measures that the government has taken in terms of restrictive measures in the different industries, I beg to differ with my co-panelist when he says that these measures are okay and I don't have a problem with them. When you look at the tourism industry, I think it's up just a week and a half ago when they finally said, okay, if you are now going to go to an establishment on a short holiday, then you are allowed to have alcohol within that establishment if you're residing in that establishment. Prior to that, they said we've opened the borders and locals can also, cross around the country and try to promote this industry at basic fees. And yet you are finding tourists had restrictions where you're going on holiday, but you cannot be served alcohol, and you cannot sit 4 people at the table. So if you're a family of 7, they're actually not contextualizing the restrictions that they're placing to curb COVID-19 in terms of how to ensure business continuity in the different industries. So I beg to differ, and I would like to challenge some of these authorities to really look at what are the restrictions they're putting. Are they in a sense where they contextualize the reality that we are going through? A lady called Faith Mutombe made a breakdown of how she had a startup for a water company, and she put down a breakdown of why she had to shut down that water company. And if she shuts down that company, those are probably 3 to 15 jobs that have been lost. And she said she actually gave the taxes that are being imposed on her prior to COVID-19. And then remember now what our government is doing, they're adding additional prerequisites in order for you to open your establishment post-COVID-19.
Yeah.
So above and beyond the taxes and licenses that you needed to get, which were up to 8 or something, now you had to get 3 or 4 other certifications at cost in order for you to try and continue selling water, which, by the way, now people are not buying. They're probably boiling because they're cutting on costs.
On that note, let's ask Simeha this. How much more is this shrinking the business, or the business, fraternity? Because then you realize that in as much as we're talking about loss of jobs, we also are talking of individuals who run their businesses, and most of them have been closed down. The bar owners are complaining today. They say, what, did it have to go to that point where you again tell us to close down the bars? And you see around the matatu industry operating, you see churches operating, you see people moving around. Did it have to get to that point, Simeha?
I agree with Gloria on that one of alcohol. Gloria, I'll give you that one.
Yeah.
But on a very serious note, Linda, I'm just saying that how to govern and so on and so forth. I'm not that optimistic. I'm not that optimistic at all. I look at this and just see that COVID-19 or coronavirus made a bad situation worse. And for me, that's why I keep insisting. The good I could see out of this situation, out of this crisis, is if it can offer us an opportunity to go back to the political question.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have any false hope that the Ministry of Finance can change and suddenly begin to fix the economy, that the Ministry of Health can suddenly change, that suddenly we can have competence in people responsible for our governance. I do not think that is going to happen. If there's thing that can force us to come together as a nation, to see this as a governance crisis, and know that we are not going to expect anything better from this crisis, but what we should expect, in my humble opinion, is an opportunity to say, look where this took us. What if something worse came? We've been through terrible, terrible times as this nation. I do not think those who are responsible for public governance will suddenly get better because of COVID-19. I think let us take advantage as a nation and stop before we go to the next elections to elect or be forced upon us another set of incompetence with a bad system, a broken political system, and then the cycle just continues. We are an extractive society where you have a small group that feeds on just extracting from others.
Yeah.
Until we fix that, what makes that possible, I don't think we should expect any better, Linda. That is how pessimistic I am. That is how I'm not going to raise my hope and have false expectations that it can get better with what the system we have now and the people we have now.
And that is where we get to wind up this conversation, indeed, an extensive conversation that really would take us a day trying to deliberate on. But we all say again to Kenyans, stay woke and ensure that at least you try your best to abide by the rules. Who knows what will happen next? But importantly, we all cross fingers that indeed we're able to deal with the pandemic as a global fraternity to a point whereby again the communities or the economies are going to find or regain themselves back. It's going to take a while, like they say, or they project, but all the same, we hope for the best. Gloria Oroba, youth policy analyst and governance expert, Joseph Simera, thank you so much for your time this morning. As we cross over to a different segment altogether, it was great having you and looking forward to have another session. Thank you also so much for the feedback. That's where we get to wind up this point, and we cross over to the lifestyle segment after this break.
Thank you. Have a good day.
right, welcome back to the broadcast. Time for us to discuss love and finances, relationships and finances. And this morning, we're hoping to get a hold of Patrick Minor, commonly known as Mike, who's a mental psychologist. But importantly, right now we have Henry Mwaniki, who's a personal finance specialist and will help us, put perspective to this. It's an issue that, bedevils lots of homes or many homes. And most of the people will tell you that all the problems, or a majority of the problems that are within the family setup, within marriage, culminate from financial issues. Some of them even lead to levels where people divorce. So before you get to that point, are there solutions that you can find to this? Are there conversations that would have revolving around this, and you're able to save your family and you're able to manage your finances well? So that is what we'll be discussing this morning, and we take a look at all, top marriage killing issues, especially on matters of finance. So when you speak to a specialist, they will take you through that session. They'll give you breakdowns on how other families have managed their finances. Because, when you get into that family setup, it's an investment. It's a lifetime investment. It involves children. It involves loved ones. It involves monies that are supposed to be distributed across all these needs of the family. So if you do not distribute this well, then unfortunately, this is not going to work for you. So here we are, and the conversation starts right now. Henry Mwaniki, are you on board? Still waiting to get a hold of Henry Mwaniki. Like I said earlier on, a personal finance specialist, and also Patrick Minor, or commonly known as Mike, who's a mentor and a psychologist. They're going to take us through the psychological and the financial perspective of dealing with finances when you're in love, or when you are with your partner, and especially at that point of marriage. It is time also to welcome you to share your experiences with us. Tell us what your experience has been. If you've got any question for the special finance individual, and if you have any question for the psychologist, then I welcome you to send them #morningcafe at Linda_Lela TV47, the numbers to call, or the SMS short code equally running down on your screen. Let's get to hear your questions, and we'll present them to the specialists so that they can be able to help us through. So, like I said, it's all about love, relationships, and money. So, yes, how do you balance this? How do you manage this? And we have the gentleman ready. Henry Mwaniki is on standby, right?
Yes, I am.
Yes, Henry, how are you?
I'm very fine, thank you. How are you?
You well? Good to have you.
Nice to see you too.
Yes, and money is not just an issue at the family level, or, office level, workplaces, business places. It is an issue across. And in most cases, at that family level, it gets sensitive, because then it involves a scenario where you pick money from this point, and we all come at that central point. And we say, now that this is what I made from my business, this is what I made from my office. And we sit here and try and balance the money and try and share the money equitably so that they can address the issues of the family. First of all, just how important is learning the art and, the aspect of finances at the family level? We still are trying we're experiencing difficulties in having that conversation stable, but not to worry, because we'll make sure that we purpose to have the gentleman so that we can have this conversation that is pretty important, if at all you're looking forward to have, say a dynasty, a family setup that is well catered for in terms of matters finances. In most cases, you find that people retire to troubles, people retire to tough times ahead, people retire and their families crumble down because of financial difficulties. But if you plan very well, with the little that you make, you are able to come together as a family and ensure that you secure your future, and above everything, you secure your marriage, or you secure your love, or you secure your relationship, or your affair. So it's very important that we have these conversations. Can finances ruin relationship? These are the questions questions that we'll be asking. Is money important in a relationship? Some of the people say that, you know what, for as long as I love you, I really do not need the money. It's a lie, as many would argue. Money is crucial. So do we have the gentleman? Mr. Director, we have the gentleman? All right, Henry Mwaniki, personal finance expert, and Patrick Minor, commonly known as March mentor and psychologist. Gentlemen, first of all, we'll start with that question that I had directed to Mwaniki. What is the importance of getting your finances right when in a relationship?
Maybe I'll start with what I'd call a rhetorical question.
Mm-hmm. This is proving to be difficult. Mike, are you there? Mike? All right, we might have to take a short break and we try and sort that out. We'll be right back with that conversation, so don't you go anywhere. Of course, in the meantime, make sure that you send in your questions and, of course, be on standby to call the specialists. We'll be right here to ensure that they guide you through after this break. Yes, and yes, the conversation is on. Apologies for that. And equally, gentlemen, apologies for the same. Henry Mwaniki and Patrick Minor, commonly known as Mike. And we might not have enough time to expound on this, but I believe on the panel that I have, or the panelists that I have on board, and we're going to make it as short and sweet. So, gentlemen, hamjambo tena, and we start off with this conversation from where we had started. And this is the question that we asked. What is the importance of balancing your finances when in a relationship? Mwaniki.
Thank you very much for that question. And I was going to say that when you look at two people coming together in a relationship, it's quite a number of dynamics are at play. One of the ironies of relationships is the expectation that our relationship will be perfect. Yet each of us individually recognizes that we are not perfect. So it's a combination of two people who are not perfect in their right, that's expecting an outcome of perfection when they come together. And oftentimes even finances is one of these aspects, because rarely do people go through a process that equips them, that trains them, that sharpens them, that disciplines them to manage personal or household finances. There's a general assumption that we have competence we are bringing to the table when we come together. Yet there are so many dynamics that inform how we relate with our finances, and they color how we will be able to do that interaction around that resource when it comes to relationships. One of the telling processes for probably those who walk the journey of courtship and into marriage is how you handle all those demands that will inform what becomes of your wedding day. Already you can start telling how we are predisposed towards finances as we journey there together. But in other contexts and relationships, it's less clear and you have less to go with. Just the trust that this individual is competent and will be able to handle the finances. And it's always a pitfall.
All right. Can finances ruin relationships, much? Based or from, of course, what we've heard?
In fact, Linda, one of the most challenging things in even premarital counseling is finance.
Okay.
The finance, the issue is, if you come to finance, it is the biggest problem that we have in the relationship today. Because we are looking concept that a man should provide, a man should be the one doing this and this. So the woman's money, ni yangu.
But is it not the case, Mike? Let's be realistic for a moment. Should it not be the case anyway?
Linda, let me tell you the truth. Because we need the genesis of us on managing finance is the most important things in life. And that's why you'll find most of the people, the divorces and challenges in the marriage is based on money issues. If I cannot provide, then what type of a man am I? But both of us can provide. Today I can empower my lady to get a good job. But when she gets a good job, now you become a beggar. It's like now money have decided is the one determining factor on moral authority. If I have high money, if I have high salary, or I'm bringing more cash, the moral authority now comes high. If I don't have some money and my lady is the one, like now this COVID, there's some people now are being sustained by maybe the woman because she's working, maybe she's somewhere, and maybe the man was in the business and the business has gone down. Those who did not manage finance well, who did not, by the word, go in courtship, develop some principles, they're having problem now. So the man has become a beggar. So this is something that, Linda, it needs to be discussed. and need to be told how do we go about finance in marriage, in love.
So that in a nutshell is to say that finances are important in any relationship. So in the event that finances are important, then at what point should couples combine their monies based on your argument? Because you say that in most cases women have looked at men as though they are the providers, so their money or money that is meant for the men is money that's supposed to be used. So when we speak about this, at what point then should couples sit down and say that, you know, it is time that we combine our finances and we chart the way forward?
By the word go, by the word relationship is starting. Like for me and my wife, my friend, we have one. There's no her money, there's no my money. Only what we have is responsibilities, different responsibility. I'll do this and this. By the word go, by the word say go. And that's why you find in many churches nowadays, one of the topic in premarital counseling is finance. Hata kabla waingie, let them know that how are they putting, what principles are they putting on finance. So should not come after tushaingiana ndio tuanze kuongea. By the word go tumeanzana. How do we start managing it? So Linda, this starts from the beginning of the relationship. How we go about it.
My take on it, Linda.
Yes. And equally, Henry, as you give us your take on the same, I'd want to know, should it start from an individual point of view? Because, you know, you find that we have different characters. Some of the people are nicer, some of them are mean, some of them are generous. So when you two get together, if you've not fixed yourself, what makes you think it would be easy to fix the two of you?
Yeah, that's my take. That this is a question of trust. If for whatever reason, whether it's experience, what I have seen in society, my beliefs, my background, whatever it is, brings me to the conclusion that I cannot be transparent and open with my partner or my spouse about my money. And this, like has just been said, is from the very beginning, then I'm sorry, that relationship is already on a shaky ground, because trust, a critical ingredient, is absent in that relationship. There is no transparency. And it may be with good reason. It may be because of what I've seen, what I've experienced, what society has taught me, what in my socialization I've been brought up being informed. But if I come into a relationship and already I'm saying this part of my life, we are not going to share it, then already it is already compromised in that relationship. Now, how do we end up in that position? We don't go through any process that trains to manage and take responsibility for personal finances. I've been in the field training individuals, and you'll be surprised that some of our biggest beneficiaries are accountants and people in finance, auditors in their own right. They understand corporate finances, they understand debits and credits, but for some reason, that does not translate in how they manage around personal finances. So if individually you have not come to a place of discipline, of understanding the basics, of organizing around your money, then it becomes very difficult when you pair up with somebody else, that in that context, you will now become a successful individual. You cannot be a lizard in one situation and become an alligator in another situation. It will be consistent. So if you don't have discipline, if you don't have the right attitudes towards your money, then when you come into a relationship situation, it will not become better because you are in a relationship situation, unless the partner you are with is very accommodating and able to mold you and to help you along. So it starts with the individual, then it comes to the couple.
Comes to that point. All right, and almost on the very same note, might, then I would ask this. While we say that it's important that we sit down as family and, you know, chart the financial progress of the country, of the family together. And one would want to ask this. Specialists have argued that it is a bad idea to separate money. It is a bad idea to split the bills. It is a bad idea to see to it that, in relationships you have different accounts and all that. But in real sense, we also know very well that, if you meet together and you're empowered and you all are making money for the family, sometimes there's that need for one to attend to their own personal needs. So how can this be addressed so that we'll still have the same part, but at the same time we have the liberty to go out there and address issues that are personal without bringing conflict?
I think, Linda, this is a good question, but it's all about love to Genesis. Because money should come after that. Mm-hmm. If both of us, and my brother have said about trust, and I love this lady, I have this and this and this, then it doesn't become a problem. I don't see the problem of my lady having a float of 10,000 when she goes here and meet her friends and this, she's there. Or me having a float of 10,000 for me to manage myself, because there are some things which are personal. Ladies will go and see a dress, pap, it's not a personal, some things come and report, I did this and this and this. But if our genesis of love is one, if we go with the Genesis 2:18, that you leave your mother and your father and become one, the concept of living each other, what the Bible says, it's even behavioral, it's even character, even money-wise, and you're one, such that hakuna ati pesa yako imeisha nisaidie, it is one. So if we have the trust, if we have the understanding of each other, if we are in a position to discuss, because some people might misuse, you might be trusting more, and the other one, you live 24/7. So ukiangalia kwa account, it's over. And that's why the dialogue and the communication and putting things right by the word go are very important. But not forgetting personal needs. Not forgetting, Linda, you have some friends after work and you'll have to buy coffee, something of the sort. You don't have to call me, sweetie, I want to buy this and this. No. You have a float that you can use on all the way you want. Na ikimalizika sitakuuliza ulitumia aje, because there's a trust.
Yeah.
There's that understanding of each other. So the concept of understanding each other, and especially, Linda, if the genesis of this love, in fact, I love my brother have said, there are people who are so much cognitive, understanding debit and this, but practical, zero. Reality, zero.
Yes, let's now be practical in that sense. When money is probably too much or there is surplus, then maybe one might not question much. But just how practical would it be for a family setup that does not have so much of money, but there's one individual that will say, okay, let me take something and go and do what so and so. Let me take something and probably send my mom. Let me take something and probably give the baby to do what and everything. Just how practical would it be? And how much more can understanding breed the confidence to, just say, it's okay, no problem, you pick this, but it's fine?
I think, if I can jump in.
Yes.
There are some very basic tenets of how we should manage our finances. And if we have those in place, then it becomes very possible for a couple to journey together in matters finances. So, the basics. Are you keeping track of expenses? Are you operating from a budget? Do you have an investment plan in place? However basic, it could be very simple, but do you have one? Do you have short, medium, and longer term financial goals that you are working towards? Have you worked through how are we actually putting money aside, bits and pieces that are helping us inch closer towards our goals and our intentions? Then what are our needs, our entertainment needs, our social obligation, black tax, what's loosely referred to as the black tax, because we have obligation in the context and in society. Have we taken time to just figure out how much does that amount to, and have we allocated something to it? So if we haven't done this simple conversation, then we make the mistake of thinking, because there is a common pot here with so much, I can keep picking from it and using it for what I feel is a very justified need. My brother needs some loan and it's urgent and I can extend it to them. or we are having this very important activity and I want to be part of it, or this wedding is coming up and I want to get an outfit for it. All of them well intended. Because the interesting thing when it comes to relationships, when people act, they judge themselves by their motives, but the others will judge themselves by their actions. So I have good intentions and motives, and that is why I'm acting a certain way. But my motives and intentions are not necessarily known by the other party. So I'll get a backlash or a reaction because possibly I was putting money aside so that I can make a down payment for a house, for example. But because you have seen there's some money put aside here, then you think, oh, actually I can take this and I can put it into the business to bridge our gap in the business because I need it. So is there a conversation and have we put these very basic things in place? If you haven't, there's no way two can work together unless they're in agreement. The Bible speaks to that. So just basic, let's sit down and say, okay, we are a couple. We're in this together. We have kids here. There's education obligations coming down the road. We have retirement coming towards us in another 10, 15, 20 years. Are we putting something towards that? Have we separated that kitty? We have needs. You have extended family. I have extended family. We have obligations towards them. Are we putting something to address that? And when that is exhausted, what is our recourse? Do we go into the kitchen budget and say we eliminate meat from the next week so that we can be able to attend to this need? Just those conversations are not had around. And people feel my contribution, if I bring to the pot 30,000 and my spouse brings to the pot 50,000, we tend to feel, hiyo 30 ni yangu, sio yetu. So I have a say on the 30. You do what you want with the 50, but the 30, don't ask me what I did with it, you know? But let's say, no, we have 80. Our living standard and lifestyle is at around 40. Or let's squeeze ourselves to live at around 40. And let's spare 10 towards this, and 10 towards that, and 10 towards the other. If we have those mutual conversations, the likelihood of conflict is lowered. If we don't, and oftentimes couples don't, there will always be conflict.
Now let's loop in much on this one, and Monique brings on board very pertinent points. But then the question at this point would be, yes, their interests, yes, their agreements. You've sat on the table and you have few agreements, but equally remember they are interests of individuals that would not necessarily match with the interests of your partner. For instance, you find that there's a family, the extended family, you probably have interest of helping your mother out there, have interest of seeing to it that your siblings are able to go back to school. So all this requires finances, and such could not equally be the same scenario on this other side. So how do you get to strike a balance on the same, and again do not end up making the other partner feel as though you are being biased, you're pegged towards helping your family as opposed to helping this other family. Your family could be needing help and this other family does not necessarily need the help. So how do you strike the balance?
Linda, let's talk about that. If Linda, we are together and we want to help your mom, let's talk about it. Because if you do it alone, later it might bring conflict. Monica have said is all about how do we put things on the table? How do we discuss them?
This is a scenario that I just witnessed the other day. Someone said, we really do not have a problem, or this couple that does not really have a problem with helping, both sides. But reality is that there was one side that really needed so much of help. And in most cases, they will come to their son. So this son was complaining, you are making my partner feel as though I am focused much on helping my family as opposed to helping across. But I mean, honestly, just how practical can it be for individuals to acknowledge that?
Number one, Linda, we need to look about what is our ableness towards helping.
Yeah.
Because try to imagine, I'm just getting a salary of 50,000. And my lady, she's getting 20,000, or she's getting also 50. And now here is my mom, here is this and this. No matter how they are, I can only help. I can only stretch where I can. We can only stretch to this level. But if I concentrate, and especially when you come to extended family, if we are not very careful, we'll break the marriage. Because the way you've said, and I agree with it, we have different needs and everything. But those needs are supposed to be brought together. and see how do we go about them? How do we deal with them? How, at what level, at what extent can we assist? You can't give what you don't have. You can't give everything to your mom and remain with nothing. So you just look the living standard. What is our limit? What is our? You have said about 80,000. So in the 80,000, kuna watoto, kuna sisi, kuna kazi, kuna bus fare, kuna fuel. At what level do we go now outside us and look about now my wife's family or my family? If we decide to help somebody in school, let's say this time, who do we take? Who is more needy? Kuna kijana pande yenu na kuna kijana pande huyu. Huyu amepata hivi. Can you look possibility? Huyu yenyewe, my dad can do this and this. And also maybe I have other brothers. I have other brothers who can also chip in. You know, dialogue. Then we say, in this side of you as Linda, yenyewe, your mom is a single mother, hakuna mtu mwingine, then I need to sit down and say, anyway, there's more need here. What is urgent and important? And what is urgent but not important? You know, we look those temperaments of life. What is urgent by now and what is important? It might be urgent but not important. It's the truth. It might be urgent and important.
Yeah.
So we dialogue together. And let's not me start empowering my mother without your consent, because that's now bring conflicts. So when it bring, and another thing, Linda, look about the stuff that is happening in Kenya nowadays, where we give for the ladies, kazi yako ni kununua vitu za nyumba and this, and me, my salary, my finance is to buy shamba, to think about future. I have had so many cases in my office. Ladies who are so to the wamejitolea kabisa. Yeah, nyumba, house girl, what, all those stuff.
Yeah.
And the man is now buying the shamba, investing. When go haywire, the man says, no, where is sort? But the lady contributed a lot. She contributed. But now, the shamba belongs, it's my money. You know, we need to dialogue. We need to come back to the drawing board and talk things and share things, such that the Mwaniki have said, it is not my 30,000 is mine and this one is yours. It is now ours. When you're buying that, it is combined. It's ours.
And because of the interest of time, much, equally, let me allow Mwaniki 30 seconds or so to also weigh in on the same. At that point where you want to make a huge investment, major investments for the family, I mean, how do you go about it? In about 30 seconds or so, as we wind up.
Okay, and also just to pick from that that input also, I think just listening to us, there are very critical tenets of personal financial literacy that are gaps in our contexts. So, for example, we use primary income to support our lifestyles. Whether it's giving, whether it's paying debt, whether it's school fees and all of these investments, like the question that you are asking. But it's not primary income that should be going into that. And it will never be enough. And it's designed that way. Because, and we know we are Africans, we don't eat seed. We eat fruit. And the reason why it will never be enough is because if it's not enough to meet your need, then it's your seed. You're supposed to be investing it. And it's a fruit of your investments that should be supporting your lifestyle and your benevolence budgets. But we take the primary income and we consume it. We respond to desperate needs around us. So if you're going to go into investment, like I said earlier, come to the table, say this is our common pot, this is how much we have, this is what we can apportion towards the investment. And the apportioning is at least 10% of your household income should go towards investment, minimum, every month. And then now agree what investment vehicle can we peg this to, and don't take away from that.
All right.
If you're not doing those basics, Linda, we are not headed for a good experience in the future.
Henry Mwaniki, personal finance specialist, and Patrick Minor, mentor and psychologist. Time sadly is not on our side, but I believe that we've picked something that we can carry home and would be helpful. Thank you so much for keeping it TV47. That's where we get to wind up Morning Cafe. My name is Linda Alela. Do have the rest of a good day ahead.